So we have been working with the GCF and the LCM and using what we call the ladder method or successive division to be able to find the greatest common factor of a set of numbers and the least common multiple of a set of numbers. And so what we're going to do this week is extend our thinking on that and use that method to actually carry out adding and subtracting fractions. Sometimes we have the same denominator, sometimes we do not. But if you remember from your previous work with fractions, that when you add and subtract fractions, we need to have common denominators. So today's practice is going to focus on adding fractions. And so to review for the strategy, we're going to use this example of 3/8 plus 5/12. So typically when we have a problem like this, what I like to do is set it up vertically. So 3/8 plus 5/12. And so when I set it up, I'm going to create a space so that I have an opportunity to write my equivalent fractions that I'm going to create once I determine the common denominator I need to use. So using my ladder method, if I have my numbers 8 and 12, I'm going to look and find my common factors of 8 and 12. So I see 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So remember my least common multiple, I make my L, and I know that my least common multiple is 4 times 2, which is 8, times 3, which is 24. So I'm going to go ahead and write 24 as the denominator of my equivalent fractions. I know that to get from 8 to 24, I need to multiply by 3. So I need to multiply 3 times 3, and now I have 9 24ths. To get from 12 to 24, I need to multiply by 2, and so 5 times 2 is 10. So now that I have common denominators, I can go ahead and add my numerators. 10 plus 9 is 19, so I have 19 24ths as my final answer. Once I determine my final answer, I always want to look and see, can I simplify this fraction? And no, I cannot. It's in simplest form. So I know that that's as much as I can do with adding those two fractions. The next thing we have to consider is what happens when we have mixed numbers. And so sometimes we have a situation where we have a few things that we have to consider. So let's start with an example of, 8 and 4/5 plus 2 and 3/10. So again, I like to set up my problem vertically because it lets me align my numbers up, just like I would if I was adding and subtracting decimals. I want to line up my numbers and my digits. So I'm lining up my fractions. So my first step here is to consider what my equivalent fraction is going to be using my common denominator. I know that 10 is a multiple of 5, so I'm just going to go ahead and use 10 as my least common denominator or least common multiple. I know that 5 times 2 is 10, so 4 times 2 is 8. I don't have to multiply anything here because 10 times 1 is 10, so I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite my fraction so again I stay lined up with my fractions and my whole numbers. When I add my numerators, I end up with 11/10, and I have to add my whole numbers, which is 8 and 2 is 10. Now when I look here, 11/10 is an improper fraction. It's improper because the numerator is greater than the denominator. So I know that there are 10 tens make one whole, so I know that I can rewrite 11/10 as 1, and then there's 1 left over, so I have 1 and 1/10 is the same as 11/10. So what I need to do here now is consider that I now have 10 plus 1 plus 1/10. So my final answer is 11 and 1/10. So I had to do some regrouping here because I had a whole number within the fraction when I added my two fractional pieces together, which I had to add on to the whole numbers that I already had. So that's a review of adding fractions and mixed numbers. Your practice this week will include both. Your practice today, and tomorrow you'll begin working with subtracting fractions. So have fun and make sure you check your work and use your math boxes to show your work.